and your company.
So my name is Mike Wenger. I spent my last couple summers working and volunteering in Kenya and Zambia, building computer labs and libraries. Great experience, learned a lot. I had very flexible funding behind me, which gave me a great opportunity to work with a wide variety of organizations and learn a lot about both large players in the international development space, players like USAID, World Food Program, UNHCR, as well as smaller players in the space, Peace Corps volunteers, church groups, local community-based organizations. And although it was a great experience, it was very frustrating to see the inefficiencies in the space, as there were so many people on the ground trying to make a difference, but most of them tended to not share best practices or not even be aware of each other's efforts, and it was frustrating to see this reinvention of the wheel. I also had time to work on the fundraising communication side of the nonprofit sector while working at the organization Orphans International and E&Co. At both those places, still great experiences, but there was a lot of inefficiencies in terms of exchanging information internally and then turning around and sharing that with the open public in an effort to engage donors. And based on my experiences and the inefficiencies I noticed in the sector, I wrote my senior thesis about the problems that are inherent in exchanging information, the technologies that were available to offer solutions, and what I thought was needed to help solve the problem. And graduated, submitted some of my ideas into a competition and won $10,000. And knew I was started to get onto something, and was really fortunate to connect with my partner John Brennan, someone that has a strong tech background working at Microsoft and the Department of Defense. And back in August, we started working together on the social enterprise Open Action with the idea of helping organizations and both nonprofits, student groups, social entrepreneurs, basically allowing everyone to kind of tell their story of impact in an open way to help engage their user base and connect with like-minded groups. So starting my own social enterprise never really crossed my mind early on. It was just something that I was very passionate about. I have an economics background and was always concerned about efficiency and trying to avoid waste. And in the nonprofit social sector, waste is abundant. And so it really just started off as kind of a hobby, a passion, became the senior thesis that I just became obsessed with. And then once there was really a lot of buy-in from a lot of other stakeholders and there was funding opportunities available, I realized that it was starting to pick up some momentum. And then after meeting John, I knew we were in a place where we were in a position to start a new idea, not just for the sake of starting a new idea, but because we really had something that was really innovative where there was nothing else in its place. And that's why when we finally decided to move forward and get the ball rolling on Open Action. I'm really passionate about international development work. Having spent time in Kenya and Zambia and a few other developing countries, to see extreme poverty is something that is life-changing. I was fortunate to experience it my sophomore year in college. It definitely changes your priorities and makes you appreciate things in life, but also helps you recognize that there is that larger calling to help those that are less fortunate. And particularly in the international development space, just what I'm really passionate about is trying to foster collaboration and bringing groups together, because everyone at their core really wants to help make a difference, but when everyone does it separately, we can't have the same collective impact. And so I'm really passionate about finding ways to make the space more cohesive. So the aha moment took place in Zambia. I had just come off 3 weeks of interviewing staff at 28 different organizations. And again, great conversations with staff, but the troubling piece was that I would be talking to one group and they'd say, we're interested in putting a well in at this school district. And then I'd say, well, that's really interesting. I was just at another organization last week and they were talking about the same school district and also doing a well. Have you had a chance to connect? And they wouldn't know the organization that I was talking about, even though their offices were right across the street from each other. and seeing how there was such a large disconnect in such a small remote area in western Zambia, and recognizing that that same disconnect carries over to even community service and economic development work here in the United States. The aha moment was basically just that people don't know of each other, primarily because it's tough to find someone in a simple Google search. And it's tough to get people to spend the time to plug in their content on an aggregation connectivity platform, because that takes time. And so trying to figure out ways around those problems was really my starting point in launching Open Action. One of the great things about the social innovation space is that you don't have to be an entrepreneur. I know there's a lot of focus on social entrepreneurs and starting new ideas, and I was very hesitant to do that because I'm someone that never wants to reinvent the wheel. And so I spent a lot of time researching the space to see what other actors were working in this idea of greater connectivity, and actually was able to connect with a few other organizations and partner and kind of absorb into each other, with the idea of just creating something to create something doesn't help the space. And so one of the beautiful things is the idea of intrapreneurship, and that's something I'm very passionate about, of the idea that making change internally from something like a Walmart will have a much larger impact than being a small player that never reaches scale. And so there's a value in social entrepreneurship and starting something new when that doesn't exist yet in the space. And there's equally a value in bringing change from within. Yeah, so collaboration is a really important thing, especially in the technology space where Open Action is, because you can't build everything yourself. And the idea that other groups have core competencies that sync up nicely with what you're doing, it only makes sense to try to find others, connect, and collaborate. And so one of the groups, for instance, that we're currently collaborating with is Ushahidi, the group that does crisis mapping via SMS text message in places like Haiti and Kenya, with the idea that we don't have a core competency in mobile functionality, and they do, and syncing up our services and trying to integrate them and is something that would improve the value of what we're doing and strengthen our services to our community. The challenge is really getting started and gaining momentum. Early on, when you have an idea and you really believe in the long-term potential of it, and you have this grand vision of let's do this, it's really tough rallying people behind you and really rallying the right people that are willing to kind of contribute time and help you get running. And so early on, especially in the days of lots of email out to groups trying to connect before we've proven ourselves and established ourselves, there was a lot of no's and organizations kind of not recognizing our value because we weren't there yet. And so we kind of hit that turning point where we're now starting to gain traction and momentum, but the early days of trying to get buy-in before you really have proven yourself is really challenging. And that's one of the biggest challenges of entrepreneurship, is the starting point, and rallying the troops and getting the ball rolling. My ultimate vision for change is the idea that whether I'm digging a well in Uganda or I'm doing a composting project on my university campus in upstate New York, the idea is that I should be able to connect and identify other players either in my community or working on the similar issues, and be able to share best practices and tap into their collective knowledge, with the idea that I don't know everything and I need to learn, but I want to learn in a smart way that avoids coming across mistakes that other groups have already made, and also helps me tap into some of their innovative practices. And so the idea of change for me is really helping others, empowering others to extend the impact that they're already having.